Revelation chapter 11. And there was given to me a reed-like stick, and one said, Be arising, and measure at once the inner sanctuary of God, the holy place, and the holy of holies, and the altar, and those who are worshipping in it. But the court which is outside of the inner sanctuary leave out of your calculations, and do not begin to measure it, because it was given to the nations. And the city set apart for the worship and service of God, they shall trample in contempt and disdain 42 months. And I will give authority to my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands who have taken their stand before the Lord of the earth. And if, as is the case, anyone desires to injure them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if, as is the case, anyone shall desire to injure them, in this manner it is a necessity in the nature of the case for him to be killed. These have authority to shut the heavens to the end, that no rain may be falling during the days of their prophecy. And they possess authority over the waters, to be transforming them to blood, and to strike the land with every plague as often as they shall desire. And whenever they finish their testimony, the wild beast, the one who ascends out of the bottomless place, shall make war with them and gain the victory over them, and shall kill them. And their dead bodies shall lie upon the street of the city, the great one, which is of such a character that it is called allegorically Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. And they of the people and tribes and languages and nations keep looking at their dead bodies 3 days and 1/2. And they do not permit their dead bodies to be laid in a tomb. And those who dwell on the earth rejoice over them and make merry. And gifts they shall send to one another, because these 2 prophets tormented those who live upon the earth. And after 3 1/2 days the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet. And a fear, a great one, fell upon those who were observing them with interest and purpose. And they heard a voice, a great one, out of heaven, saying to them, Come up here at once. And they ascended to heaven in the cloud, and their enemies viewed them with interest and purpose. And at the same hour there occurred an earthquake, a great one, and the 10th part of the city fell, and there were killed in the earthquake 7,000 persons. And the rest became terror-stricken and gave glory to the God of heaven. The 2nd woe is past. Consider this. The 3rd woe is coming shortly. And the 7th angel sounded his trumpet, and it came to pass that there were voices, great ones, in the heavens, saying, The kingdom of the world has come into the possession of our Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign as king forever and forever. And the 24 elders who are before God, seated on their thrones, fell upon their faces and worshipped God, saying, We give thanks to you, O Lord God, the omnipotent one, the one who is and who was, because you assumed your great power and reigned as king. And the nations became angry, and your wrath has come, and the time of the dead to be judged, and to give reward to your bondslaves, the prophets, and to the saints, and to those who fear your name, to the small and to the great, and to destroy those who are destroying the earth. And the inner sanctuary of God, the one in heaven, was opened, and the ark of his testament was seen in his inner sanctuary. And there came lightnings and voices and thunders and an earthquake and hailstorm, a great one. And there became visible a miraculous portent, a great one in the heaven, a woman arrayed with the sun. And the moon was under her feet, and upon her head was a victor's crown of 12 stars, and she was with child. And she cried out, suffering birth pangs, in pain to give birth. And there became visible another miraculous portent in the heaven. And consider this, a dragon, a red one, a great one, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his heads 7 royal crowns. And his tail sweeps away the 1/3 of the stars of the heaven, dragging them away by force. And he threw them into the earth. And the dragon took his stand before the woman about to give birth, in order that whenever she would give birth, he might destroy her child. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, with the peculiar qualities of masculinity, power, and vigor, who is destined to be shepherding all the nations with a scepter of iron. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the uninhabited region, where she has there a place which is in a state of readiness, having been so prepared by God, in order that there they might be providing her with food 1,260 days. And there arose a war in the heaven. Michael and his angels went forth to do battle with the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, yet they did not have the power to win out. Neither was there found any longer place for them in the heaven. And the dragon, the great one, was thrown down once for all, the snake, the ancient snake, the one called the devil, slanderer, and the Satan, the adversary, he who deceives the entire inhabited earth. He was thrown into the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a voice, a great one in the heavens, saying, Now there has come to pass the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ, because he who accuses our brethren has been thrown down once for all, he who accuses them before our God day and night. And they themselves gained the victory over him through the blood of the Lamb and through the word of their testimony. And they did not consider their lives precious, and thus come to love them to the extent of death. They were willing to die a martyr's death. Because of this be rejoicing, O heavens, and those who are dwelling in them. Woe to the land and the sea, because the devil went down to you having wrath, a great wrath, knowing that he has but a little time. And when the dragon saw that he was thrown into the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. And there was given to the woman the 2 wings of the great eagle, in order that she might be flying into the uninhabited region, into her place, where she is being provided with food there, a time and times, and 1/2 a time, safe from the presence of the snake. And the snake threw water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, in order that he might sweep her away with the river. And the earth went to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon threw out of his mouth. And the dragon was angry with the woman, and went off to wage war with the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. And he stood upon the sand of the sea. And I saw a wild beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and upon his horns 10 royal crowns, and upon his heads names, the essence of which is impious and reproachful speech, injurious to the divine majesty of deity. And the wild beast whom I saw resembled a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth resembled a lion's mouth. And the dragon gave him his miraculous power and his throne and great authority. And one of his heads appeared to have been mortally wounded, the throat having been slashed. And his death stroke was healed. And the whole earth followed after the wild beast in amazement. And they worshipped the dragon, because he gave the authority to the wild beast. And they worshipped the wild beast, saying, Who is like the wild beast, and who is able to go to war with him? And there was given to him a mouth speaking great things, and things injurious and reproachful to the divine majesty of deity. And there was given him authority to operate 42 months. And he opened his mouth in a slanderous attack against God to his face, to defame his name and his dwelling place, and those who dwell in heaven. And there was given to him permission to make war with the saints and to gain the victory over them. And there was given to him authority over every tribe and people and language and nation. And they shall worship him, all who dwell upon the earth, every one whose name does not stand written in the scroll of the life, the scroll belonging to the Lamb who has been slain in the mind and purpose of God, since the time when the foundations of the universe were laid, and who is looked upon by God as the slain Lamb at present. If, as is the case, anyone has ears, let him hear at once. If, as is the case, anyone leads others into captivity, he goes into captivity. If, as is the case, anyone kills with a sword, it is a necessity in the nature of the case for him to be put to death by a sword. Here is the endurance and fidelity of the saints. And I saw another wild beast of the same character coming up out of the earth, and he was having 2 horns like a lamb, but he was hissing like a dragon. And the authority of the first wild beast, all of it, he exercises in his sight. And he causes the earth and those who dwell on it to worship the wild beast, the first one, whose death stroke was healed. And he performs great miracles, the purpose of which is to attest the divine source of the words uttered by the one performing the miracle, even to the extent that he causes fire to be descending out of the heaven into the earth in the sight of the men. And he deceives those dwelling on the earth by means of the miracles which it was given to him to perform in the sight of the wild beast, saying to those who are dwelling on the earth that they should make an image of the wild beast derived from his likeness, who has scars of the death stroke made by the sword, and yet who came to life. Note, he was actually dead. And there was given to him the ability to give animation to the image of the wild beast, to the end that also the image of the wild beast should utter words, and that it should cause as many as do not worship the image of the wild beast to be put to death. And he causes all, those who are lowly in station and those who are great, and those who are wealthy and those who are poverty-stricken, and those who are freemen and those who are slaves, to be given a mark of identification upon their hand, the right one, or upon their forehead, to the end that no one should be able to buy or sell except he who has the mark of identification consisting of the name of the wild beast, or the number which stands for his name. Here is wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate at once the number of the wild beast, for the number is that of man, the human race, and his number is 666. And I saw, and considered this, the Lamb standing on the hill of Zion, and with him 144,000 having his name and the name of his Father permanently inscribed on their foreheads. And I heard a voice out of the heaven like a sound of many waters, and like a sound of great thunder. And the sound which I heard was like that of harpists playing upon their harps. And they are singing a song new in quality before the throne and before the 4 living beings and the elders. And no one was able to learn this song except the 144,000, those who had been redeemed out from the earth. These are they who were not defiled with women in an illicit way, for they are chaste individuals. These are they who follow with the Lamb wherever he may be going. These were redeemed from among men, firstfruits to God and the Lamb. And in their mouth was not found a lie. They are without blemish. And I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having a message of good news, eternal in its character, to proclaim as glad tidings to those who live upon the earth, and to every nation and tribe and language and people, saying with a great voice, Fear God at once, and at once give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him at once who made the heaven and the earth and sea and springs of water. And another angel, a second one, followed, saying, It has fallen, Babylon the Great, which has caused all the nations to drink of the wine of her fornication and the wrath of God which accompanies as its retribution. And another angel, a third one, followed them, saying with a great voice, If, as is the case, anyone worships the wild beast and his image, and receives a mark of identification upon his forehead or upon his hand, he shall also himself drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which has been poured out unmixed in the cup of his anger. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of, connected with their torment, ascends forever and forever. And they do not have rest day and night, those who worship the wild beast and his image. Also, as is the case, if anyone receives the mark of identification which consists of his name. Here is the endurance of the saints, namely those who keep the commandments of God and the faith which they have in Jesus. And I heard a voice out of the heavens saying, Write at once, Spiritually prosperous are the dead who die in the Lord from this time forth. Yes, says the Spirit, to the end that they may rest from their labors, for their works accompany them. And I saw and considered this, a cloud, a white one, and upon the cloud one sitting, in appearance like a son of man, having upon his head a crown of victory, a golden one, and in his hand a sickle, a sharp one. And another angel came out of the inner sanctuary, crying with a great voice to him who is seated on the cloud, Thrust in your sickle at once, and reap quickly, because the hour to reap has come. For the reason that the harvest of the earth has become dry and thus perfectly ripe. And he who is seated on the cloud thrust his sickle upon the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the inner sanctuary, the sanctuary in heaven, having also himself a sickle, a sharp one. And another angel came out of the altar, who has authority over the fire. And he cried with a great voice to the one who has the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle at once, and gather at once the bunches of grapes of the vine of the earth, for its bunches of grapes have become ripe. And the angel thrust his sickle into the earth, and he gathered the vintage of the earth and threw it into the winepress of the wrath of God, the great winepress. And the winepress was trodden outside of the city. And there came out of the winepress blood as far as to the bridles of the horses, to a distance of 1,600 stades. And I saw another supernatural portent, an attesting miracle in the heaven, a great and marvelous one. 7 angels having 7 plagues, the final ones, final because in them has been brought to its intended end the wrath of God. And I saw something resembling a glassy sea mingled with fire, and those who have come off triumphantly out of the meshes of the wild beast and his image, and the number which signifies his name, standing on the glassy sea, having harps of God. And they are singing the song of Moses, the bondslave of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your works, O Lord God, omnipotent. Just and dependable are your ways, O King of the nations. Who shall not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name? Because you only are holy. For all the nations shall come and worship before you. For your judicial acts characterized by righteousness have been shown openly. And after these things I saw, and there was opened the inner sanctuary of the tent of the testimony in heaven. And there came out of the inner sanctuary the 7 angels, the ones having the 7 plagues, arrayed in linen, clean, shining, and girded around the breasts with golden girdles. And out of the 4 living beings gave the 7 angels 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and forever. And the inner sanctuary was filled with the smoke arising from the glory of God and from his might. And no one was able to enter the inner sanctuary until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels should be brought to an end.